Most people who lost money in this scam weren't stupid. They were early. And in crypto, being early is supposed to mean you win. That's the whole mythology. Get in before the crowd, get out rich. What nobody tells you is that sometimes the crowd was never coming, and the people who built the entrance already had their bags packed at the exit. If you're new here, subscribe now. This channel doesn't do surface level. Every video goes somewhere most creators won't. In January 2022, a project called Frosties launched on the Ethereum blockchain. The concept was polished enough to pass. Digitally rendered ice cream characters, each one unique, each one supposedly the key to a metaverse game still in development. NFT projects were doing this constantly at the time. You minted a token, you got a character, you got community access, and if the team delivered on their roadmap, your asset appreciated. That was the promise. Frosties sold out in roughly 1 hour, 8,880 tokens. Total revenue, approximately 1.1 million US dollars. By the next morning, the developers had vanished. Discord deleted, Twitter gone, website down, wallets drained. The two men behind it were Ethan Nguyen, known online as Frosty, and Andre Lacuna, who went by Hey Andre. Both were in their early 20s. Both were living in the Los Angeles area. They had built the brand carefully, aesthetic, consistent, responsive in the Discord. They had talked to their buyers directly. They had built trust with the specific language of crypto culture, roadmaps, utility, staking rewards, exclusive access. It wasn't a particularly complicated fraud, but it worked because the environment it operated in had been conditioned to reward exactly this kind of behavior. Move fast, trust the vibe, don't overthink it. What makes Frosties notable isn't the scale. $1 million in the context of crypto fraud is almost quaint. What makes it notable is the arrest. In March 2022, less than 3 months after the rug pull, federal agents arrested Nguyen and Lacuna at Los Angeles International Airport. They were about to board a flight. They were charged with wire fraud and money laundering conspiracy. It was one of the first federal prosecutions specifically targeting an NFT rug pull. The Department of Justice wanted to make a point. Whether that point landed is a separate conversation. But Frosties was a footnote compared to what happened with Squid Game token. In October 2021, someone, and the identity of that someone remains genuinely unknown, launched a cryptocurrency called Squid. It was positioned as a play-to-earn token tied to the Netflix series Squid Game, which had just become a global cultural phenomenon. The branding was unmistakably derivative of the show. The website cited the series directly. Netflix had nothing to do with it. The creators had no license, no partnership, no affiliation. They simply absorbed the cultural momentum of one of the most watched shows in streaming history and packaged it as a financial product. The token launched at approximately 1 cent. Within days, it was trading above $2,800. That is not a typo. The price increase was somewhere in the range of 230,000%. Financial media covered it. CNBC ran the ticker. CoinMarketCap listed it with a prominent warning that users had reported being unable to sell the token. An anti-sell mechanism had been baked into the contract, but the coverage kept coming regardless. The warning was there. People bought anyway. On November 1st, 2021, the Squid token price collapsed from approximately $2,861 to fractions of a cent in under 5 minutes. The developers extracted somewhere between $3.38 million and $3.9 million, depending on the source. They were never identified. No arrests were made. No charges were filed. The wallets moved the money through mixers and the trail went cold. The people who created one of the most visible crypto frauds of 2021 are, as of now, anonymous and free. The mechanics of what they did were not complex, but the execution required a specific kind of cold intelligence. They needed cultural timing. They needed a brand people already trusted and felt emotionally attached to. They needed the anti-sell mechanism written into the smart contract quietly enough that it wouldn't trigger an alarm before critical mass was reached. And they needed the financial press to do their marketing for them, which it did enthusiastically without meaningful due diligence. This is the part that deserves attention. Not the fraud itself, but the infrastructure that made it frictionless. By late 2021, the crypto market had developed a media ecosystem that was structurally incentivized to amplify price movements without interrogating the underlying asset. YouTube channels, Twitter accounts, Telegram groups, Discord servers, all of them operating in a constant state of FOMO amplification. The phrase "do your own research" had become a kind of absolution, a way of technically disclaiming responsibility, while functionally pushing people toward riskier and riskier bets. The phrase meant nothing. Nobody was doing research. They were doing pattern recognition. This token looks like the last token that went up, therefore this token will go up, dressed in the language of self-directed financial intelligence. The people who lost money in Squid weren't uniformly naive. Some of them had been in crypto long enough to know the signals. But the signals had been wrong in their favor so many times that the risk calculus had shifted. They'd ignored red flags before and made money. The muscle memory was, hesitation costs you. That muscle memory was exactly what the Squid developers were counting on. Ruja Ignatova understood this at a far deeper level than any of them. She didn't call it a cryptocurrency exactly. She called it the Bitcoin killer. She gave it a name, OneCoin, that implied both singular dominance and inevitability. She launched it in 2014, not from a server farm or a Telegram group, but from stages, actual stages, with lights and crowds and the specific theater of someone who has already won. She spoke 6 languages. She had a PhD in law from the University of Constance. She wore red dresses and made eye contact with audiences of thousands and told them they were the early ones, the chosen ones. The people smart enough to see what the banks didn't want them to see. OneCoin raised approximately $4 billion from investors across multiple continents: Europe, Asia, Africa, Latin America. It operated from 2014 until roughly 2017, when Ignatova disappeared. She boarded a Ryanair flight from Sofia to Athens in October 2017 and was never seen in public again. She is currently on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. The U.S. Department of Justice indicted her in 2019 on wire fraud and money laundering charges. She has not been found. Her brother, Konstantin Ignatov, took over operations after she vanished. He was arrested at Los Angeles International Airport in March 2019. That airport keeps appearing in this story, which says something about where crypto money moves and where the people who take it try to go. Konstantin pleaded guilty to fraud and money laundering charges. He became a cooperating witness. He described in federal court an organization that had no actual blockchain. OneCoin had told investors it ran on a proprietary distributed ledger, a private blockchain that was more advanced, more secure, and more scalable than Bitcoin's. It didn't exist in any meaningful sense. The blockchain was a database, a centralized, privately controlled database that the company could edit, inflate, and manipulate at will. The coins had no external market. They could only be traded on OneCoin's own internal exchange, which had fabricated volume and fabricated prices. The people who bought in weren't buying cryptocurrency. They were buying a number inside a spreadsheet that OneCoin controlled entirely. And yet, even after the European regulators started issuing warnings in 2016, even after journalists started publishing investigations, even after national governments across multiple countries told their citizens explicitly that OneCoin was a fraud, people kept buying. The organization kept growing. New markets opened. New recruits came in. There is a specific psychological phenomenon at work here, and it is worth naming precisely because it explains not just OneCoin, but the entire spectrum of crypto fraud that followed it. When someone has publicly committed to a belief, told their family about it, recruited their friends, staked their identity on being the person who saw the opportunity first, the arrival of contradicting evidence doesn't produce doubt. It produces defensiveness. The brain does not process the new information neutrally. It processes it as a threat to the self. The instinct is not to update the belief. The instinct is to discredit the source of the challenge. This is not a fringe psychological quirk. This is documented, replicated behavior. Ruja Ignatova didn't stumble onto it. She built her entire operation around it. The OneCoin pitch was structured so that skepticism itself became evidence of the skeptic's ignorance. If you didn't understand why OneCoin was superior to Bitcoin, that was a reflection of your limited financial education, which, conveniently, OneCoin's educational packages could fix, for a fee. The product and the belief system were fused. To question one was to question the other. To question both was to identify yourself as someone who didn't understand the future. This is a much older technology than crypto. It predates the internet entirely. What changed with OneCoin, and what changed even more dramatically with the generation of rug pulls that followed, was the speed of deployment and the geographic reach. Ignatova could stand on a stage in Macau, and then a stage in Dubai, and then a stage in Lagos, and then a stage in Sofia within weeks. The pitch didn't need to be adapted because the underlying emotional mechanism, the fear of being left behind, the desire to be recognized as someone who saw what others missed, is consistent across cultures. The aesthetics change, the mechanism doesn't. Sebastian Greenwood, the Swedish co-founder of OneCoin, was arrested in Thailand in 2018 and extradited to the United States. His trial has been delayed multiple times. Konstantin Ignatov, after years of cooperation with federal prosecutors, faced sentencing that was itself repeatedly postponed. The legal apparatus around OneCoin moved slowly, which is its own kind of indictment. Meanwhile, the market generated new frauds with the regularity of a production line. Anatoly Lakodimov, a Russian national operating out of Tallinn, Estonia, ran Bitslato, a cryptocurrency exchange that federal prosecutors described as a money laundering engine, processing over $700 million in illicit funds. He was arrested in Miami in January 2023. Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network simultaneously designated Bitslato as a primary money laundering concern, the first time that authority had been used against a crypto firm. The funds that moved through Bitslato connected to ransomware operators, darknet markets, and fraud schemes across multiple jurisdictions. That same year, Sam Bankman-Fried, who had been positioned by financial media as the responsible adult of the crypto industry, the one who wore shorts to Washington and testified before Congress and donated conspicuously to political campaigns, was convicted on 7 counts of fraud and conspiracy. FTX, the exchange he founded and ran from a penthouse in the Bahamas, alongside a small inner circle of people in their mid-20s, had used customer deposits to fund the trading activities of a sister company called Alameda Research. When Alameda's positions collapsed, the customer funds were gone. The whole was approximately $8 billion. He was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Bankman-Fried had understood something that the smaller operators often didn't. Legitimacy is not the same as legality. You can build the appearance of legitimacy, the political donations, the effective altruism branding, the congressional testimony, the Forbes covers, while operating a structure that, at its core, is doing what every rug pull does, taking money in through one door and moving it out through another. The difference in scale was enormous. The difference in mechanism was not. What connects Frosties to Squid to OneCoin to FTX is not a shared ideology or a shared technical method. What connects them is a shared understanding of a specific human vulnerability. The vulnerability of people who believe they have finally found the thing that will change their position. Not just their financial position, their social position. The validation of being right about something that other people dismissed. The story they get to tell afterward. That desire is not greed in the simple dismissive sense. It is something closer to hunger for recognition. And it is, historically, the most exploited desire in the architecture of financial fraud. The people who built these schemes didn't hate their victims. That's almost the most disturbing part. They simply found them useful. They found the desire useful. They found the culture useful. They found the media useful. They found the specific psychology of the early adopter, willing to tolerate uncertainty, primed to distrust institutions, hungry to be validated, and they aimed directly at it. Ruja Ignatova is somewhere. She has been somewhere for 7 years. The FBI has a page with her photograph and a number to call. Nobody has called with anything useful. That's not an anomaly. That's the ending this kind of story almost always gets.